read it off here. Think of your salmon system that you're a part of. Step back so that you see that frame that you're active in. Where are you at? What are you doing? What is happening around you? How do you feel? So we're going to check in. And we're going to think about our salmon system that we're each part of. And what I'm going to ask is that you check in with describing, maybe in just 1, 2, 3 words, one connection that's part of your salmon system that nourishes you. And we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to check in all at once. This will be a 1, 2, 3. So your salmon system that you're part of that nourishes you. Think about that for just a moment. And if you're ready, on the count of 3, whether your volume's on or off, don't worry about that. Go ahead and check in with the part of the salmon system that nourishes you. 1, 2, 3.
Strips.
Kids.
Strips.
Knowledge.
Well, welcome everyone. So one of the aspects that is important from what we just did for a check-in, we all have a salmon system that we're a part of. We connect with it in a variety of ways, and there are parts of that that are going on constantly, and it's happening for all of us all at the same time. And so as we checked in all at the same time, that's one of the facets of our salmon system, is that it doesn't stop, and it's certainly not singular. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So for those of us that were in Petersburg, here is a variety of salmon systems that were mapped out by the cohort 2. A variety of representations of salmon systems, and as far as I can tell, they are all accurate. There's a lot going on in each of these salmon systems, and these perspectives are all very important, and they're all very honest. And what I'd like to do is present a viewpoint that hopefully captures as much of these representations as it can. What you'll find is that it might be a little bit dry, it might be a little bit mundane, and if there's one thing that you should take away from this, is you should feel sorry for my wife. If you can go on to the next slide, and the one next. So the idea in the salmon system diagram that I'll be talking about, it's really a tool for thinking. It's about it's about giving a place to make your own connections, as well as to validate other connections that exist. Next. Within this, I think it's important to be able to see both the simple and the complex. It's this diagram, you should be able to draw your stories and do that in a way that's simple or as complex as you'd like. And part of this is that it's not necessary or practical, for that matter, to take everything in at once. One of the core ideas here is that it's manageable bites. We're working across the complex systems, and to deal with that, we have to have some level of manageability. Next. Within the diagram, what we should see is that there's a variety of patterns, and what I'm calling patterns of force and objectivity. What I mean by that is some of the connections that you're going to see are going to feel comfortable with. Others you're not going to feel comfortable with. They'll be opposing. They'll be in conflict. Within that, look for a sense of who's the subject, what is the object, and how subjects and objects can move back and forth, where the subject becomes the object or the object becomes the subject. Think about what gives motion to any element within the diagram, and in particular, what makes it healthy, what makes it thrive, as well as what can stymie or inhibit any of the elements from being at their best. Next. So this diagram in a really simple frame is just, it's an inventory of things that are. It's broken out into some basic categorization or classifications. The idea here is that each of these things that are on the diagram are essential to the system, that you can't ignore any one thing. And that provides a starting point that folks can come together and work from and communicate across. If you can have that starting point where we agree that these things exist, that they're essential, that they can't be ignored, that they can be accounted for, that each of the elements are individual, they're discernible, they have their own characteristics, their own properties, their own requirements, and they can be treated individually. Next. So about these classifications, this diagram that presenting is an adaptation from a land management model that I've been working on. And so the structure of this is it's influenced by resource management modeling. I think that's important to keep in mind as I go through this, because that management aspect is kind of it's an important theme that to be aware of in looking at this, because it's structured to see how management works, and management is a controlling function, and so it's really, in a way, it's about influencing outcomes, and so that definitely has some flavor into the diagram, and it's designed to show, in that way, it's designed to show operability, function, and interdependent relationships. Next. So within the diagram, one of the things that's important to realize is that there's not any motion within it. With a lot of the other examples that we saw from Petersburg, there was a lot of motion, and we know that there's a lot of motion within systems. And this diagram doesn't have any motion. It doesn't have any arrows. What it does have is connections, and we're gonna take a quick tour of the layout of it, and I'll describe what the thinking is in each of the areas. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to toss out before we move on? Okay, then next slide, please. So the salmon people system, and again, this is a kind of a management model. We've got these various areas that are described, and I'm going to go through them one by one and kind of see how they fit together. Next. So the first part is this who we are. It's this area of the diagram is kind of asking a question about me individually or my organization. How does who is the interpreter of the diagram? And so in the case of myself, so for my organization, the Kenai Peninsula Borough, I would look to see, well, what is our mission statement? And I would say, what are the things that really define who or what the organization is? And in this case, it would be like the municipal laws and the budget that we draw up every year. And those types of basic identity pieces. In an individual case, I think it's really interesting to look at these same questions. What is our reach? How do we identify ourselves? Where's our capabilities? Next. The objectives for this salmon system is to have sustained stocks, quality habitat, to have management capacity, and to achieve economic and social benefits from the system. And these objectives will certainly influence what the outputs of the system are. Next. Participants, we know that the salmon system is very complex, and we should each find ourselves represented as one or more kinds of participants, and we should find everybody else in the room also having a place in the system. On the top end of this, you'll see those that catch fish and those that manage the resource or have influence in the management or policy, consumers that use the products, communities that are influenced by the salmon system that they're a part of. This connectors piece I think is really interesting, looking at the role of educators, artists, and other forms of advocates. That's maybe one of the most interesting parts of this participants aspect that I see. As well, there's a place for predators. So that's where our mergansers and seals would be found, bears, eagles. And the bottom one, I'll take just a moment to explain the idea, intersecting actors without malintent. So sorry about the mouthful there, but what it's getting at, so the list there is intersecting industries, intersecting land users, intersecting water users, and intersecting world affairs. And this area is intended to capture those other activities that we know influence our system that we're concerned about. And we often have a hard time getting a handle on how to deal with them. In Petersburg, we had the gentleman, I apologize, I can't recall his name, a gentleman from BP, British Petroleum, and he was talking about how in the course of BP's business, they really did not want to have a negative impact on salmon systems. There was no malicious intent that BP has. They have no reason to want to cause negative effects on salmon systems or any other system for that matter. But they do participate. And so this is a place to catch that. Next. The next aspect is a resource inventory. And I have this broken up into two parts, salmon and habitat. And the resource inventory for salmon, I think oftentimes we look at them in terms of a geographic year class, so the age class per water system across various species. And also we have hatchery fish or farmed fish. On the habitat side, equally important in the resource inventory, we have lake and stream environments and marine environments. And I've got a couple question marks there with the marine environments, as it's certainly not my area of expertise. And this, we can already see here that within this diagram, there's a lot of things that are probably missing, not captured well. Hopefully that this at least provides a launching point to see that the connections are there and provide a place to expand. Next. So this next area is resource aspects. And this is kind of getting into the breakdown of some properties, if you will, or ways in which the resources are important, or what characteristics of the resources are important to us as we think about them. And I've got a sample of physical, genetic, runtiming, and cycling. So a physical breakdown of the fish, as you know, I might come into this thinking that a salmon fillet is what a salmon's all about. And when I allow that to be broken down and see that other parts of the fish are important, that expands my view. On the genetic side, wild versus hatchery, place for that. Run timing, we know that the timing aspects and other cycling aspects of salmon are very important. Next, please. Resource aspects on the habitat side, looking at kind of a breakdown on the marine side as well as the stream and lake side. Again, this is a pretty short summary of very complex topics, and each of these topic areas could be expanded greatly. For the purpose here, just trying to keep it short enough to recognize that all of these various aspects of the resource are important and play an essential role to the system that we're a part of. Next, please. Community and geographic context. From a management side, this is getting into the planner side of me. We've got 4 areas here. The participant and resource distribution, that's looking at the difference between the Kenai River system and the Yukon River, or the difference between a short coastal stream that doesn't have communities near it at all. Of course, we have different user groups that interact, different community needs around that. The geography of each system within the system has its own dynamics. And we see that reflected in community plans and fishery management plans. And I'm gonna, next slide, please. This is definitely a big area, and the values that we put on the system and parts of the system certainly have big driving effects on how we look at and interact with our systems. I left this for anybody else to fill in. This is certainly an area that's very dynamic, and I would love to have more conversation and love to continue to have my ears open to understand how various values interplay as we look at our systems. Next. Ethics. We've got two kind of fields of ethics here that presenting. This first one is a stewardship and ethic. This is a very action-oriented body of ethics, and I think that it's something that we can feel very close to and see quick results in how a stewardship ethic viewpoint translates into appropriate actions when working within the resource system. Next. The ethical field that I have under interdependence is one that I'm very curious about and have found to have profound impact on not only the way I think, but I think it's this is a field that you can find throughout history. 4 terms: temperance, justice, prudence, and fortitude. And there's a lot going on here, and I would love to talk more about this, and I will a little bit later. Next. Management allocation. This area of the system gets into how we make choices of use or allocative choices for key aspects. Salmon, we've got this really simple escapement, harvestable surplus, and food chain. On the water side, a little bit more diversity in here: transport and navigation, consumption of water, water used for, that's regulated for energy production, channelization, diversion, irrigation, pollution, and then water that's allocated for having wild and scenic properties. It's environmental quality and quantity. Next. Same for land. Land is allocated in a number of ways. Here I've got represented ecological services, land use and development, which is a big one on the Kenai, managed soils and managed vegetation that can include for certain things like forestry, and ownership regimes. I think in terms of different ownership patterns and how we view ownership. Next. The economic structures, and I've got 4 different ways to look at this. In the middle there, financial systems and institutional societal frameworks for financial structures. That spins off into things like banking and cash economies, as well as sharing economies. The bottom one, individual intention, attention, daily living, works, social duties, and recreation. That's starting to poke at the idea that economics is at the individual level. Economics is really boils down to choice, individual choices. When you talk about an individual choice, you're talking about economics. And we make lots and lots and lots of economical choices every moment in our life. And the top part here, choice prioritization. This is maybe the most novel part of the diagram as far as I can see. And it's an adaptation of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs that looks at the role of safety and energy exchange and energy conservation. And maybe someday I'll get a chance to write more about that. Next. So in this next series of what we're going to get into more is how we then apply, how we implement, or the practices that we use when interacting with the system. So these are getting into some pretty action-oriented categories. And this practices and methods, this is just a small subset of what's really out there. The focus here, this example is based on the practices involved in simply catching fish and moving them to through a processing to a preservation state. Looking at the aspect that instruments and tools are involved in each of those practices, and this whole practices and methods, I guess what I would say is that when I think that this is best approached by when you look at the diagram based on what participants you're really trying to track within your system or within your story, would inform what practices to really focus on or fill out here. Next. So kind of in the same way, programs, processes, procedures. This is kind of a sampling of processes that exist within the system that are very important to make it run, and it's also not a complete list. Next. Policy statements. Policy, what I found is that within a management system context, policy is the last thing to get developed, which is kind of where we're at here. It's also where I'm at with my resource management system that I work with at my office here. Policy isn't approached well until the rest of the system is understood enough to know where the policy needs to fit in. We're also a young state, and so I think we're short on policy. But I also know that there's policy aspects that are developed that I just haven't captured. Next. So looking back at this, these are the areas that we just covered, and the idea is that all of these elements are part of the system. They're all essential to the system, and they shouldn't be ignored. Next. How the diagrams use. So as I mentioned, there's no arrows on this diagram. The idea is that it's for each of us readers to put our own arrows into. And so as I've been talking, each element is just a statement of being. It's just an identification that this thing exists, that there exists a king salmon, or there exists a pink salmon, or there exists a stream, or an ocean, or a fisherman, or a fish processing plant. The statement of intent brings two things together. So it identifies a connection that wants to be made. So as an example, I would see myself as being the fisherman, and the intent is that my wife would like to have a case of smoked salmon put up. And so how do I connect Marcus the fisherman with the case of smoked salmon? I have to then bring in other elements that complete the story, and we end up with statements of action. Or we even a third element that gets Marcus the fisherman to a case of smoked salmon. And for example, I need to identify the species. It's going to be coho salmon. Statement of effect. So Marcus and smoked salmon and coho in a vacuum, we know is missing a lot of content. I have to figure out what my water body is. I have to assume that I can assume that the world is my oyster and that salmon was already there waiting for me to catch it. But in reality, in a statement of effect, I probably should recognize that ADFNG needs to put out a fishing regulation that allows me to enter into that water, and that the run timing is such that if I try my activity in April, I'm probably not going to be successful. But here I am in October. And so the statement of effect starts to make more of a complete story by identifying more connections that work together. And then a statement of maximization starts to identify that all of these ingredients are important and they all work together. And that when you do that, you can maybe see a little bit more clear what's really going on within the system. Next.
So Marcus, I'm watching the clock, so I want to let you know you may.
Thank you.
Yep.
So within this area of perspectives, there's a lot of different ways that you can use the diagram. What I would say is that just tracking through a story is maybe the easiest way to see perspectives. Next. Integrated statements gets into, again, trying to throw more of these elements on top of each other. And a thesis that I have in here is that when you integrate the ethics, and that you have each of those ethics interplaying with each of the elements, that you find a higher order of economy. Next. So I want to talk a little bit about applied ethics. Ethics is a word that's thrown around a lot, and I want to share with you some of my views on how ethics are functionally applied. So, basic concept here: with all things, pursue the truth, or pursue a truth, maybe. Pursue what's fair. Take things in as well as let things be, and to act with duty. That's kind of shorthand for prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. It's kind of a merger of that which is good and that which is true. And I say that without trying to invoke debate on what's true. What I guess my comment on that would be that the idea here is that we can only approximate truth, and we can only approximate good. Next. In applied ethics, don't assume anything to be true. Figure it out for yourself. Realize that fair goes beyond the minimum requirements. And don't just act because I can. And also recognize that systems rely on my acting. So again, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude represented there. Next. Recognize that problem solutions are a me thing. It's not a you thing, it's a me thing. That frustration that I feel is simply my own lack of understanding. Recognizing that a reasonable explanation exists for why and how things are. And to recognize that all beings, all things have a worth and a purpose, even if I don't yet know or understand what those things are. Next. Applied ethics, I believe, can be found through these very simple questions of who, what, where, when, how, and why. And what I think is really neat about this is what you see, that kind of interesting image is an image of it's fractal geometry. And the idea within fractal geometry is one of self-similarity. That when we use the term drill down, this is, I think, this is what drilling down to me looks like. That's kind of a natural geometry. Next. What I think is really amazing about applied ethics is, again, I'm a fan of Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow talks about being values, and here's a list of his being values from, this is Maslow's from a psychology approach of the healthy person. And I believe that applied ethics bring you to what Maslow refers to as being values. Next. And taking that and applying that, I think that applied ethics also can lead to things that we value, such as faith, hope, and love. Here I showed that the golden rule falls squarely within the Next. And so how it's applied to what we're after, I think as a cohort, as Salmon Fellows, is applied ethics, I think, are an essential ingredient and really a route to sustainable systems. Next. So this is the salmon system. It's not complete, and there's plenty of variations to be had of this, but I appreciate the opportunity to kind of walk through and explain my thinking anyways on how it works and why things that are on there are on there. Next. So here's a few questions that I'll throw out. Can you find your salmon story in the systems diagram approach? Could you use the diagram to identify or isolate strong points and points of concern within the system? Can you see ways to strengthen the salmon system or the salmon people system? And could you adapt this approach to emphasize major elements in your sphere? And would it aid in communication to others? So I covered a lot of ground here, and I think it would be great if we could have some discussion.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. Does anybody want to take up Marcus on his invitation for conversation?
Yeah, this is Katie. Wow, it just makes my brain hurt looking at all that. That's amazing. Like, this is like a peek into how your brain works, Marcus. It's truly amazing. Yeah, I'm excited. I hadn't thought of using it like to follow my story or my salmon system, and I'm excited to try that and see how it works. And it just makes me think, like, if I had to draw the system, like, how I would approach it. I mean, we kind of had to do that, I guess, in Petersburg, but anyway, I just really appreciate all the work you put into it, Marcus, and I'm excited to try to follow my story through it.
Hi, this is Angelique. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Angelique.
Oh, thank you. One thing that I really appreciated is the thought of object versus subject, and I think it was in the value place you had human values and salmon values, and I think it's fascinating to consider the values of salmon as beings, and if we are to see ourselves as the objects and the salmon as subjects, how that would switch the map around.
This is Donna, and I really appreciate how systematic this is. And it's, you know, I've kind of been struggling myself with kind of where I fit into everything and how I move forward. And I think this is going to be really helpful for me to figure that out and kind of figure out where my connections are, where I could possibly have an into trying to make a difference. And because I guess I tend to just try to tackle too many things at once and then get frustrated and back off completely. And so if I have a way in, if I can create a path, then I have something to follow and a way to go and kind of ignore some of the sidetracks. So I'm looking forward to printing this out myself and kind of figuring out what that path looks like. So thank you very much for all your effort to put this together.
Hey Marcus, this is Mark. Pardon me, I'm getting over a bad cold. But no, this is fascinating and really made me think, and just, you know, in my world maybe it would look a lot different, of course, but there was things that really hit home. I mean, just the one thing that was specific that was very powerful for me that brought to, and getting back to Donna's point about slowing down and thinking about things, was when you brought up the fish and the viscera and the skin and all that. You know, we just think, oh, we want the fillet, you know, but then it's like, no, there's this whole other part to this fish that's equally as important. And so that one thing just kind of drove home how other things can, you know, just stop and take a step back and look at it. And proceed there. So yeah, thank you very much for presenting that. I appreciate that.
Marcus, this is Chris Norris, and wow, what a lot of work went into this and a lot of deep thought. It's been really thought-provoking for me, and I'm certainly going to be looking at it further. I guess I just wanted to say that I really liked the applied ethics part of it. I think that so many times these issues get so polarizing, and it's really good to take a step back and think about what our real intentions are and what our wishes are.
Yeah, hi, this is Toby. I'd like to add to what Chris said about ethics. I was really intrigued by that, and I think that the idea of including ethics in the system and taking account for it, both the ethics of humans, but also our maybe responsibilities to salmon. I think that's to me, it was an original thought. It hadn't occurred to me before, and I think it's an important part of this whole system.
Anybody that we haven't heard from? I see Werner is on the line. And Peter. So Marcus, are you, from a process standpoint, it seems to me like this is something that you will continue to refine. And so are you looking for opportunities to explore that with fellows and what they might see that you haven't touched on? Or
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of opportunities. One is certainly when we're in Kodiak, I look forward to having side conversations on this. I hope that folks take and use it for, use it for yourself. And if anybody is interested in taking and adapting this, I'd be happy to work with them to customize it to your organization, customize it to kind of where you see your, what your role is, and make the right words fit onto the diagram, words that fit the language of your system. I think that's really important. So the words that are on there are words that I chose. They're not the right or wrong words, hopefully. So a lot of opportunity to adapt it, and I would love the opportunity to work with individuals to customize this.
This is Julie. Marcus, how large is this when you print it, like at a good readable size? What you went, I'm sorry I missed the very beginning, by the way, everyone. But when I was looking at it, I was like, I need to see this in its whole giant, lovely context, and I would love to be able to print it out somehow and put it on a wall and stare at it.
And so I found that 20 by 30 works well. Walgreens prints that off. If you find a coupon code for Walgreens, which are easy to find, you can get 50% off and get it for like 15 bucks. The idea of seeing this on a single sheet of paper, I think, is really important. Just the whole single sheet of paper. Very, very rarely do we get the opportunity to see the complex ways in which the world works reduced onto a single sheet of paper, and this kind of is a proxy for that.
Hi, Marcus. This is Warren. I just had a question for you. So, in the process of doing this, what do you think was your biggest takeaway? Like, what surprised you, and what changed for you while you were doing it? Like your view of the system.
Thanks, Warren. That's a big question. I find myself using it daily. I've what I find is the value of resting my thoughts, allowing myself the relaxation of tracking, kind of tracking a process, tracking an interaction, and being able to set that down, which allows me then to track another one. And I know that first one that I tracked is still ongoing, that it didn't go anywhere, that it's alive. And so that's I think the utility that I found with it. And then I think it's through the process of doing that, of taking and running scenarios or testing it out, and like doing things that are uncomfortable, like reversing roles. I find really unexpected outcomes.
This is Ricky. One of the things that we also talked about, at least in the cohort one, was equity. And to me, it'd be interesting to see what investments get made in economic structure or management allocations, or, that in terms of monetary investments, in terms of time investments, in terms of focus that we do as a state in these different kind of boxes that you have around the salmon and people, so you can kind of see energy flows as they move through. And I think that would be a interesting exercise in trying to get at concepts of equity, who's benefiting, what are the benefits, how much energy is being put into these different boxes to deliver the benefits. One of the things, in terms of economic structure is also infrastructure, ports, airports, marine systems, highways, all these type of things that this system depends upon, and to maintain itself and to keep functioning. But overall, I think it's a great concept, great, start at it, things that can grow. I think it's really nice.
Hey, Marcus.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Just a small question. Is this the same version that I have printed out, or is this a later version?
This is probably the same version that you have printed out.
Okay, so I will put it out there that I have one extra copy, and I'm open to a bidding war. If I have an extra copy, if anybody would like to have that.
Hey, Jennifer, given that a lot of us don't have access to Walgreens or someone else to print something this size, is it possible to maybe get some copies in Kodiak when we all meet?
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
Hey Marcus, this is Peter. I think it's going to take me a couple of weeks to digest everything here, so pardon my slowness. But one thing on here that I thought just really intrigued me was this intersecting actors without malintent, and that later part, the without malintent. I'm really curious as to kind of your thought process when you went through that, and what is it possible that there's some intersecting actors that don't necessarily have malintent, but they just are kind of indifferent to, say, salmon habitat needs and that sort of thing. And, kind of would that part of the diagram be different if you took out the without malintent? Just kind of curious what your thoughts are there.
Thanks, Peter. So that category came up directly from Petersburg, and having the conversation with the gentleman from British Petroleum, where we were talking about, just this, that there's another player on the landscape, and that indifference that you mentioned, Peter, I think was kind of what sounded out within that area of the diagram on the left side where there's a perspectives box. There's a part in there that says that the diagram can illustrate empathy and it can illustrate apathy. And I think within that, what we should find is that when we self-examine, we're going to find that we're each harboring apathy, and we're all intersecting actors to other parts of the system we're indifferent to. Oftentimes we're not even necessarily very aware of it. And the difference between the apathetic approach where there's for a lack of awareness or for a lack of interest, and the change of outcome when there's empathy, when there's a recognition of a relationship. And by bringing in that relationship and giving it maybe some element of stewardship or acknowledgement, or giving it space to also coexist and to be healthy within the system, that's I think where the suggestion of a higher economy comes from, that there's a higher economy to be gained within systems that exhibit a higher degree of empathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, one of the things I've been struggling with is, just like motivation. What are people's motivation? What are corporations' motivations? What's the state, the state, with this vote for salmon coming up? It's hard to compare with different motivations. Like, if money is the motivation, then everything changes. If sustainability is a motivation, and so I'm trying to wrap my head around that a little bit. Like, how do you, I think it's easy for me to go to that place of malintent, like, but if it's not malintent, it's just the chase for the dollar, then how do you, if that is the motivation, then where does that leave other motivations? And how do you, how would you get a corporation to feel empathy, I guess?
I know from the native corporation and the community perspective from the communities that as it is now, to build a road and get permits to build roads and to get a hatchery, not a hatchery, but a airstrip or a road or whatever it may be, then it's difficult. And I think that's where a lot of the native organizations are playing a part in voting against that. At least that's my understanding, is that it's already a challenge to get a project done in a community of 50 to 500 people. And they're opposed to any more than what's already currently there. That's and that's the way I feel as well. Not that I'm not for I'm all about the salmon, number one. But there's also another aspect of it, and it comes from more of the local or the traditional knowledge, meaning that until the state and the feds are more receptive to managing different ways, you really don't see any benefit to change it for the worst, for the worst of the way that the people live in a community. Not saying that salmon's not important, salmon's important, but we've already been through some challenging years, these last few years, of the changes that have occurred. And in their minds, there's a lot of questions. Well, how we've already done what you guys wanted us to do. How you want us to do more and change our ways to where it's going to, have a much more negative impact. and they're not willing to do that. That's the way they're talking with a lot of people. That's my the way that I'm perceiving them.
Is there anybody else you haven't heard from who's just itching to chime in?
And I guess I just want to compliment Marcus on the good work he's done. It's going to be helpful for me. Thank you.
So we're coming up to 105, which is the next part of the agenda, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for giving me this opportunity of your time, and really appreciate Jeff for helping me to set this up and give me the space through the Salmon Crossing. I would encourage others to take these opportunities to share things that you're doing, and this has been very helpful to me. So thank you all very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcus. This is really wonderful. And I do have a big poster on my wall, so I look at it often. And,
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I was just saying thank you to Marcus, and I do have this poster up on my wall, and it's definitely food for thought on a variety of levels, including just incredible awe for Marcus's brain and ability to craft this. So, but thank you. Okay, so now Aaron has joined us, and maybe Rhea, if you guys can squish together a little bit over there. And we're talking off of my speaker. So shifting gears, we're going to think a little bit about our gathering in Kodiak. And so Cameron, do you want to?
So I just want to spend a few minutes sharing a few ideas and thoughts about.
Hey, we can't hear you. Your speaker has a directionality problem. You got to speak right into your speaker, otherwise you come out muddled and we can't really hear you.
All right, how's this? Is this any better?
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll use Jennifer's computer. Thanks for letting me know, because I want to make sure that everybody can hear us. So what I was saying was I just want to share a few thoughts and ideas, and certainly answer any questions about Kodiak. Jennifer and I and Rayette are working to get everything ready. And Knock and Simonetta. Oh, you're on as well. Wonderful. And so we've got a whole team of people who are working on it. A few things to think about is that, one, I know some of you have read it, and but we would really love everyone to read Getting to Maybe before Kodiak, because that is going to be material that we'll be using while we're there. So if you can make sure that you can get access to that book and read it before Kodiak, that would be wonderful. And if you need help with that, I think we do have some copies, so we can get some more. We can help. Okay. So this is going to be an interesting gathering, because we're going to have initially we're going to have our first cohort there, and then we're going to have a day that's going to include both cohorts and the founding partners, which is going to be a lot of fun. And then cohort one will leave, and the founding partners will leave, and then we'll have a solid 2.5, almost 3 days with cohort two. So what we're trying to do is look at the overall purpose of this gathering, as well as what each cohort, what we want to have, what we want to accomplish while we're there. So there's a document that that the team has put together here, and it's still in development form, but it lays out a few things that I think are important for you to know. One is that we want to make sure that you have time to think, time to discuss, time to work together. And so we've really intentionally built a plan that is not constantly having activities. So there will be time for you to work together and have a lot of freedom in terms of what you're doing. The other thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is for cohort 1, it's an opportunity to really reflect on where you've been, what you've done, the learning that has occurred from that, and then to be thinking about how to sort of shift that learning to cohort 2. So there'll be opportunities for you to work on that and to interact with cohort 2. In cohort 2, this is a really important gathering for you to gather that information from cohort 1, but also to begin to think about your work moving forward. So there's going to be an opportunity to form teams. There's going to be an opportunity to develop project ideas. And so there'll be some really intentional time for that. The last thing that I'll say in terms of the design is that there is, in that middle day where both cohorts are there and the founding partners, there's going to be some really exciting open space time. And that will be an opportunity for you to decide on what you want to talk about, the topics and the issues that are important to you. And you'll have an opportunity to create conversations and share that with others. And so there'll be eventually a marketplace of conversations and discussions about the things that you really want to talk about in relationship to this work that we're doing together. So more to come on that in terms of what that looks like. And finally, and then I'll pass it on to others, is that we are going to send out surveys. So the surveys for cohort 1 and cohort 2 will be different. We really encourage you to fill them out because they'll be information that we need to gather in order to inform the gathering. So we're going to get those developed ASAP and get those out to you so you have time to fill them out. But we really want to make sure that you know that those surveys are coming, and it'll be an opportunity for us to sort of populate some of the activities that we're doing based on your feedback. So I'm going to stop there because I've been talking too much, and see if there are questions, and also let Rayette or Jennifer or any of the other team members jump in.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, that's obviously a general sort of overview, a few key pieces of information. Does anybody have any questions right now?
Yeah, I have a question. So will the survey kind of direct topics of discussion, or like, are we going to pick certain areas? I think we talked about that a month or so ago, or yeah, that's my question.
So the survey will help to populate some of the activities that we're doing, because we want to make sure that they're based on what you think and feel. In terms of the conversations that you will initiate and you will lead, you know, the survey won't necessarily have anything about those. We've done the open space work before, and there'll be a time at the gathering for you to think about what it is you want to talk about with others. There will be not any need for prepping that. They'll be developed there and completed there. So there's no pre-work that is required for those. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Okay.
Other questions for us? So the schedule itself, and did you put it up on screen?
Okay.
You can. So we'll send this out to you, but it has all of the timelines, when people arrive, when people leave. It'll give you a general sense of kind of how the flow of the days will go. Again, this is still in development. We are actively working on it now, and once we get our surveys back from you guys, it'll get even more refined. But it'll give you a general sense of how the days will flow. We'll have morning breakfast. We'll do a check-in. We'll have work together throughout the day. There'll be time for you to get out into the community and see Kodiak and visit places. There'll be opportunities for the community to come in and work with you, whether it's at a working lunch or there's a variety of times that we've built in where we'll bring in community to our gathering. We'll end each day. There'll be a large sort of community reception, which all of you will be there for with the founding partners. So you'll see from this document sort of how it flows. And we're very open to your ideas. We're still in development, but we want to make sure that you had kind of a general framework for how it's going to work, and to answer any questions. And if you want to talk, any of you want to talk offline and give more ideas or have more questions, we're certainly open to that as well. But we'll have a fairly large team there from the forum, and we've been working with folks who are from Kodiak to help us to make sure that it's an exciting time.
And is that
yeah.
Okay.
So we'll send this out so you guys have it. But again, it's still draft, so we're working on it.
So this is Mark. I have a question, and pardon me if it was mentioned a little bit out there with this cold, but with our small experiments with radical intent, I'm sure that's a part of our conversation. But should we have something formally prepared? More like, or is it more just going to come out in our discussions in this marketplace or whatever?
So is your question, do you need to prepare something formally for the gathering? Yes. No. There will be an opportunity to talk about your experiments and to help. Those will help to inform the work moving forward, but there's nothing that you need to formally prepare for the gathering. Just bringing whatever information or learning that you've had from those experiences will help to inform work moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so
Can I hear you?
We can't hear.
Yeah, you're gonna have to turn it around. The mic is.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay. The Salmon Shadows team is leading a community conversation on Tuesday. So the first cohort is invited to be there to help support them. When you look at this chart, the areas that are outlined in red, that's where both cohorts and the founding partners, that's when you guys are all together. The other thing I'd like to point out, and I'm not sure it really shows up well on this screen, but we have been listening to you guys and your feedback on gatherings thus far, and there are big chunks of time in green that are open time. And so those are available to you guys to use in whatever manner you feel is going to enhance your experience. And as Cameron said, we'll be getting this out to you as well as a little more detailed agenda. If you have thoughts, ideas, definitely send them to us. I would really appreciate, I know that Toby and Freddie and Angelie are kind of point people on this because they live or have lived in Kodiak, but anybody that you guys think that we should be reaching out to invite to that community reception or those lunches, really need your help and your thoughts with that. If you have an activity or interest that you would like to offer to the group, Toby is talking about leading a couple harbor tours. Love to hear about that. And then if you have any questions, just, please feel free to email us or call. So just before I shift to a couple announcements, does anybody have any other questions right now?
Is there a deadline on when we need to confirm our travel plans?
Simonetta, who's on this call today, Simonetta is in the process of reaching out to all of you to make your travel arrangements. And if you haven't heard from her, you will be hearing from her shortly.
Yeah, this is Simonetta. Hi, everyone. I am in contact to all of you, and I heard from most of you, and I will be calling the fellows that I wasn't in touch yet, and I think we'll be able to buy tickets by the end of this week or early next week. That will be ideal.
Okay, so just two forum announcements to share with you guys. The first one is that you all are will be receiving an invitation to an event here at the forum, which is on September 28th from 5:30 to 7:30. This is a forum-wide event. We're inviting all of our friends and partners, and it's an open house and also a fundraiser for the forum. So we'd love to see you. You're not required to make a gift to come, so please come because we'd really like to see you here and have your support. This is the first time the forum has done this, so we're kind of excited about it. And the other invitation that you have received recently is for the next facilitation workshop that's being offered by our public programs team. That is taking place October 25th and 26th. You've received, hopefully by now, an invitation from Megan. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact Megan or contact any of our team. Also, I would suggest that, that's what, yeah. We also have two participants from the last workshop on the line, and Chris and Megan, and I wonder if you guys would just offer a few words, your thoughts on your experience at that facilitation workshop.
Chris has a cold, so I'll jump in. This is Megan. It was fantastic. My comments after taking that facilitation was that I really had been winging it for 25 years, and I felt like finally I had a script to go by when I was put in those types of situations that required facilitation skills. So I highly recommend it.
And I'll just chime in that I thought it was time well spent, and I learned a lot of good methods that I hope to apply. So I want to encourage people to consider being part of that conference.
Super, thanks ladies, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions with you guys offline. And the last item on the announcements list is we will have another Salmon Crossing. This is the Salmon Crossing prior to Kodiak. It will be on October 2nd. Again, 12 to 1:30. The purpose is to help us just dial in to Kodiak, take a little more detailed look at what's going to be going on, and to answer any remaining questions. And with that, any other comments, questions? Okay, I can't see them. Yeah.
So is the farm event appropriate to bring kids?
So I'll answer that. So it is like a formal like wine and cheese thing, but yes, definitely it's Alaska. You can always bring kids. I will probably be bringing my kids. So yes, if you have kids and want to come, please bring them. We'll find something fun for them to do.
We can just release them around Ship Creek for the duration.
Perfect. Super. So I think we'll do a quick checkout. And so you want to go around and give names and we'll do it?
Okay, so we're just going to go around the little boxes on the screen and just any quick thoughts as we close out today's conversation, reflecting on Marcus's presentation and the great conversation we had following that. And I'll start backwards. I'll start with Megan.
I thought that was great. I have a lot to think about, and I always appreciate Marcus's wide-ranging intellectual capacity, and I think that that is a good place to, and a good framework for our discussions in Kodiak. So leave it at that.
Julie. Julie, it looks like you're on mute. I was wondering, did you have any closing comments?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thanks again to Marcus. It's really exciting to see some of the stuff that's starting to come out of cohort 2. And I don't know most of you, so I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you better in Kodiak and seeing cohort 1 again too. Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. Going to Angelique.
Thanks, Marcus. I think that was really fabulous. What it makes me think of is in the Salmon Shadows conversations that we've had now in a few communities around Alaska, there's been a host of different users, and many people have touched upon a variety of concerns which are represented within the systems map. And so I think it's fun to try to track some of their comments through the map too.
Great. Werner.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I wanted to say thank you very much. And I saw it was I was like, when you're talking about it, looking at different parts of it, and got me thinking about some of the debates that we always have about salmon, especially with ballot measure 1 happening right now. And so I thank you very much for that. And yes, I really look forward to being on Kodiak Island and seeing everybody. And so yeah, have a good week.
Thanks, Werner. Warren?
Yeah, thanks for going through all that work. I know when we started trying to mess with it, trying to map the complexity of it was very frustrating, and it's good to see how much progress you made on that front. Looking forward to seeing everybody, and I'll probably see you guys at the forum event as well.
Thanks, Warren. Katie?
Hey, thanks for a great conversation here, and looking forward to Kodiak. And yeah, got my brain going again.
Nice. Mary.
Hey, everybody. I really appreciated that systems, looking at the whole system. And I think actually, Marcus's presentation was great, but I think I got more out of the comments that everybody else made, kind of highlighting the most interesting aspects of it. So I'm looking forward to Kodiak and meeting all of the second group of cohorts. I've met a number of you, and I'm excited about that. So see you in October.
Thanks, Mary. Peter?
Hi, I think I'm really excited about Kodiak and kind of rolling up my sleeves and digging in. And along those lines, one of the questions I guess I have, at least for the second cohort, is kind of what questions or conversations have we been avoiding, or topics have we been avoiding? And I guess I'm hoping at the next gathering we can dive in a little bit deeper.
Thank you, Peter. Donna?
I was getting ready to write that down, Peter, because I think there are some conversations that we probably should be having that we're not. So I appreciate that. I've been thinking a lot about the last Salmon Crossing and this Salmon Crossing, and how to incorporate them into the work that I'm doing with Gulf Watch Alaska, which doesn't directly have a salmon component, but everything that we study links into salmon in some way. And so I'm actually looking forward to receiving an invitation to this facilitation workshop, because I think it'll be very helpful for me professionally. And I'm looking forward to meeting everybody from cohort 1 in Kodiak, and re-meeting all my friends from cohort 2. So see you guys soon.
Thank you, Donna. Chris? You're on mute, Chris.
Try that again. I really appreciated Marcus's presentation today, because I think after a busy summer, it's going to help me to get refocused. I'm excited about interacting with both cohorts in Kodiak as well as our partners. And I really hope that we can take advantage of this gathering to really have some of those conversations that we need to have. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. And Mark.
Yeah, just echo what everybody said. That was wonderful, Marcus. I'm looking forward to connecting with the ASF1 and reconnecting with the ASF2 and talking to you all about what you did with salmon this summer, hearing your salmon stories at an individual level. I think that would be a lot of fun too, just some of those conversations. So thanks again for another great crossing.
Thank you, Mark. Ricky?
Yep, just looking forward to Kodiak, and appreciate the time and effort that Marcus put into that. It's really a good jumping off point for a lot of interesting conversations we can have.
Thanks, Ricky. Toby?
Yes, I'd really like to congratulate Marcus for putting in an organized and visual format what we've been circling here for quite a while. It's pretty impressive, and I think it'll be pretty useful in my own project. And also, I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone in Kodiak, my hometown, and I'll be happy to show it off to everybody when you get here. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Toby. Marcus?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Hey, I really appreciate each and every one of you, and appreciate the feedback. Looking forward to Kodiak, to connecting and learning from you all.
Thanks, Marcus. Freddie?
Not much, just other than thank you, Marcus, and thank everybody. Look forward to hosting you guys in Kodiak.
Great. Anybody from our team? You guys have closing thoughts? Knock, Simonetta, Rhea, Cameron? Oh, all right. Sorry. Okay.
Just real quick, I just want to share how excited I am to see all of you and to be in Kodiak with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be some great conversations. I'm really excited. So have a great week, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Okay. Rhea, Simonetta, Knock, do you guys have anything you wanted to add in?
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you in Kodiak.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much. And we'll be talking in between now and the 2nd, but look forward to seeing everyone on Zoom on the 2nd. And thanks again, Marcus, and everybody for a great conversation.
Great. Yeah. I really want to encourage you to continue to share your thoughts about things. Really important. It's really important that that these issues that seem like they're just this or this are a lot more complicated. And the perspectives of people who actually live in these communities and are